Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show planned for you today, 2-hour special edition. I am very excited to bring this for you today. Now, while I am sitting here excited, you should be excited. You should hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all of that fine stuff, and then that way you get the email every day saying, "Hey, the guys are here." Now we have one comment right off the bat. Winterstorm, good morning, everyone. Honored to be able to listen and learn. Fantastic. With that, if there are any questions or comments throughout the show, by all means, put them in the comment section. We will put them up and we will ask the questions and get them discussed. Very excited to have y'all on here. This is fantastic.
So excited.
Right? I am. I'm very excited.
I am.
I'm pumped up. This is wicked. Now,
we're excited too.
Awesome.
It's so legit.
It is. I'm going to go down the line here. I'm going to get everybody a chance to introduce themselves, 30 seconds to a minute kind of deal. And we'll hit you one by one, and then we'll get into the conversation. So I'm going to put Julia, you're in the corner right now. I'm going to put you up first, and you can dive in. Here we go. Where are you? Bam.
Hey, everyone. I'm honored to be here. I'm Julia Shelley. I am where do I start? I'm the head coach or lead coach of Army of Angels. It's a fitness and nutrition coaching team of more strong, badass women. I've been a fitness competitor for over a decade. I worked for the United Nations all throughout that time. So all of my preps for each show was done from a different deployment. So I think there was 8 shows, all different war zones. So that's why my different side to bodybuilding, I guess, working out with cement weights in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. I left the UN last year. I'm back home in Calgary, Alberta. Happy to be home now. Just enjoying my first summer home in over a decade.
Wicked. Well, glad to have you. Kathy, you're up.
Hey guys, it's Kathy Hubble, and I'm here in Penticton, BC. So I'm a 4th degree black belt in judo. I own a club called Lake Country Judo Club, and I'm a head sensei there, along with an amazing team. And from judo, I joined jiu-jitsu, and I just got my black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So that was an honor with Seb attending that. So that was amazing. Huge honor. Yeah, I also invented a product called the Never Tie Martial Arts Belt. So I'm the CEO of that company, trying to get that around the world as best I can. And I'm really super honored to be here with all of you badass women.
Again, our pleasure having you. Rebecca, you're up.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Rebecca Rouse. I live in Dallas, Texas. I don't know if I'm the only person in the United States here, but I know I'm honored to be among the Canadian crowd here. Love our friends to the north. I am the founder of Semper Stronger, which is an online fitness company promoting mostly strength training, but all types of fitness, health, and wellness. And I also work here in person at a brain health clinic, working with combat injured veterans undergoing treatment for traumatic brain injury. So I get to work with them in person in addition to the online coaching that I do. I also compete in Olympic weightlifting at the national level. I actually just got back from Colorado yesterday competing at the national championships for the 2nd time. And I'm really excited and honored to be here with you badass women. Thanks so much for having me.
This is awesome. Kate, you're up.
Okay, so my name's Kate Stewart. I've been in the Navy Reserves for about 15 years, most of that time working full-time on full-time contracts. And my latest thing is I have a podcast called Shoot Like a Girl, where I interview different military women from around the world.
Yeah. Awesome podcast, by the way, too.
Not just women, badass women.
Badass
very,
women.
very
Right.
The most badass women. Yeah.
There you go. Julie, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Julie Kelly here. I'm honored to be on the panel today as well with all these ladies. It's interesting to see how badass you guys are. I can already tell right now that everyone is certainly at next level. I live in Fernie, BC. I am a cycling coach, acceleration coaching. So that's my main gig, as well as a personal trainer and fitness instructor. I compete at the world level for 24-hour mountain bike solo racing. I've been doing that for a number of years. I think I'm up to 25 races at this point. You kind of lose track over the years, but yeah, looking forward to the discussion today.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Brenda.
Mahozo, Shojre Danajuch, Inja Sharon Jithin Shojre Nodlet, Brenda Butterworth Carr, also known as Brenda or BBC. My traditional name is Brave Bear Woman, and I spent 34 years in policing and public safety before I retired from that and made my way home to Dawson, Yukon, where I'm participating from today. And as much as I thought I was going to retire, that didn't happen. My family talked me into working as the executive director with the Tr'ondëk'wach'in, which is my First Nation. And so that's what I'm doing currently, and very honored and privileged to be participating with such amazing badass women today. Merci.
Absolutely. Tanya.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm unmuted. So I'm Tanya. I'm, I guess, a visual artist, illustrator, photographer, designer, and I practice jujitsu. I'm a purple belt presently, and under Faraz Sahabi, and I'm just kind of in awe of this panel right now.
Well, you all are outstanding, first off, and again, I'm very excited to get this conversation started. Now, the topic is the cost of success, and I was talking with Tanya. Actually, she's the one that kind of came up with this the concept. So, first off, I just want to get a definition of what you see as success. First off, like, what is success to you? And then we'll start getting into some of the costs. And before we get too into it, I just want to hit on these quick little comments here. Daniel Bonte, amazing, says, hey all, Seb in the house, savages all of you in the best way possible. He says, don't let Kathy not tell you how many world championships she's won. So how many world championships have you won?
So 7 in jiu-jitsu, but only 1 in judo.
just a couple.
Only.
Only, yeah,
Only
yeah,
one.
whatever. And then he also says BBC was the CEO of the largest RCMP division, BC, in the country. So again, no big deal. Just wandering around with the heads of the state. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and not just heads of the state, but I know lots of people who are in important positions that don't get a nod from the people that I respect. So to that point, BBC, I mean, Seb's head nearly fell off the amount of times that he's given the nod to BBC. So, you know, it's not just positions of authority or positions of power or positions of whatever. It's in those positions, but also being a freaking kick-ass, awesome human being. So
100%.
There's that.
There is that. So let's dive in. Tanya, do you want to start us off? Give us your kind of general feelings on the topic, and then what is success? And then we'll start working around the panel.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing around with the idea of the cost because I have recently come to realize that any sort of growth or any sort of change comes at a cost of something. And generally it comes at the cost of I guess usually a former narrative or a former limiting framework that you resided in, and then you have to essentially give that up in order to become something more. And honestly, in regards to success, I'm trying to figure that one out myself. So I don't really have the clearest definition, and I'm just really excited to learn from you guys.
Right. Well, let's move it around then. BBC, let's start with you. Thoughts on the cost and what is success kind of deal?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. You know, for me, the cost, I think it's part of just our evolution of growth. You know, I think that if you're going to strive for excellence, that there's going to be a pathway that you have to undertake, and there's things that you're going to have to set aside, you know, whether that's relationships, and there's so many other attributes, you know, courage, ownership, like extreme ownership, all of those aspects. For me, that's not what I actually set out to do. You know, I come from a territory where we had a number of our elders go forward to Ottawa, and they, you know, were very tenacious in their efforts in bringing about equitable treatment of all. And that has always been a big piece of a driver for me. So, you know, getting into the RCMP, that goes back to my childhood. And my mom says since I was 3, some of you may have heard this before. I frankly remember by the time I was 13, I had that interest. And it was because of all the things that were happening in the community. And, as much as I knew from our elders that I would take a pathway of, bringing about awareness to our community, whether it was public, private industry, whatever that looked like, it's the passion that I have for balance and fairness and equitable treatment. And frankly, the fascination with law that guided me into the RCMP and then into the British Columbia Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General's area that I worked in for a period of time as well. And when I think about success, I think, okay, what have you given back? What have you given back to community in a good way? What have you done that has benefited everyone in some form or another? And it's less for me about a personal success than it is the collective. And that's always what's driven me. And sometimes, that hasn't always come at an easy, it hasn't been easy in so many ways, like, family by way of example, when we talk about some of the costs and so forth, and I imagine that we'll delve further into that. Part of my introduction, I normally indicate that I have 3 sons. They're now men, and, to me, they're my boys. They'll always be that. But there were times where I wasn't always able to, attend the different Christmas events that they were in. I wasn't always able to, be there in that moment for them when they needed it. But it's finding the balance as well. So, that's some of the personal stuff. And I think where I'm at right now, many have asked me, well, I could have written, sort of my pathway for whatever I wanted to do after I left public safety and policing. But I came home because, again, it's about giving back to the citizens that I grew up with in many ways, but also how, as a self-government, that we're able to continue to evolve. We're going into our 25th anniversary, which we signed our self-government and final agreements. So, in a nutshell, that's what drives me. And my sister will tell you that I'm incredibly driven. I don't know that it's driven so much as I am incredibly passionate about doing well and bringing others along in that mentorship and ensuring that they've got a platform that they can showcase their talents from. So I'm going to just pause there.
Absolutely. I'm in 100% agreement with you. Julie, what about yourself? What's your thoughts on what we got?
Yeah, I mean, just following up some great points there, Brenda. In terms of success, there's definitely, the team, the collective, as you mentioned, or your own personal success. So for me, as a cycling coach, success may look like helping my athletes achieve their goals, whatever it is that they set out to do, watching them improve, whether it's physically or mentally, and just being able to do better for whatever it is that they've set out for themselves. So that's, one part of success. And then your own personal success. I mean, certainly there'll be many sacrifices along the way that will have to be made. But really, to be successful, I think you need to have a lot of various elements. You need to be passionate, as Brenda said, about whatever it is that you're looking to achieve. You need to be patient. So the journey takes a while. It may not be something that you'll be able to achieve right away. So you need to look at the long game and be patient along the way. Discipline. So you need to be very disciplined, whatever it is that you're looking to achieve. So if it's an athletic piece, you're going to have to really be focusing on your sleep, your hydration, your nutrition, your rest, your recovery protocols. And yeah, so those are some key elements, I would say, for success, whether it's individual or for a team effort.
Absolutely. Rebecca, what are your thoughts?
I believe that success looks like, I think it can be defined by fulfilling one's ultimate purpose and calling. And the cost of that looks different for everybody, and it can look different at different points along the journey. But a lot of times that comes with the cost of setting old versions of ourselves that no longer serve us, beliefs that no longer serve us, relationships, food, lifestyle, a lot of different things that just don't serve us for where we are in the journey and where we're trying to go. And so along my own journey, I've had to kind of thin the herd a little bit in terms of who I surround myself with. If they weren't supportive or they weren't aligned with where I was trying to go, have to pivot and evolve. And so, prioritizing sleep, prioritizing health, prioritizing nutrition, prioritizing recovery in terms of my athletic endeavors and then my business endeavors too. It kind of all ties together. But when your sole focus is achieving that true calling and fulfilling that purpose, it becomes very clear what things are going to help me get to where I want to go, or my team, or whatever it is, and then what's not going to support me in getting there. And the clearer I become on that path, the easier it is to get rid of the things that aren't helping me and that are really anchors along the journey.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Kate, thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to remember if I heard this topic on a podcast like recently. So I've been thinking about it a little bit, and I think a lot of people think of success as like, the big house or the car or the money, and they don't realize that a lot of people who have that are actually pretty miserable and like don't have a job that they enjoy. They're tired, they're not being healthy. So I think when I think about success, a lot of that is like doing something that you enjoy that feels purposeful to you. Being healthy, being happy, challenging yourself, like it says in the little banner on the bottom, like doing your best. So for me, I'm never going to be a world champion in anything, but I'll push myself doing certain endeavors to get out of my comfort zone and try and make those improvements all the time. And then as BBC was saying, like doing something to contribute back to the community, which is kind of what I'm trying to do with the podcast, and raising awareness and like sharing these stories of these super badass military women that I've been interviewing.
Absolutely. Let's go to Kathy. What are your thoughts?
That sign that I bought in Mexico, it says success, not just what you accomplish in life, it's how you inspire others. That's now sort of what I'm trying to live by more. It was a skewed version of success, I think, what I had growing up. And it was to win everything and to be gold medal at all these things and set goals, put them on the fridge, achieve them no matter what, put the blinders on and mow down the world to get the goal. And I've been too much that way for too many years. And, it almost cost my marriage for sure. And some other things that, there was no balance, and it took a long time to figure out some of that balance. And I'm still not figured out how to get that balance really, but I'm getting better. And opening my own club and helping my students and running the kids' classes and everything really helped a lot. To see them achieve became way more important than me achieving. And I've got a couple of refrigerator goals left to go. They're still up there that I'm going to try to achieve before I die, basically. But now I'm a little more balanced in that I really want my purpose has become a lot more switched to making better people in society out of my students, whether they win or lose or do well or don't do well, just making them through judo and martial arts better people, and instilling that discipline and some other things that I think will be more important to them than gold medal.
Absolutely. Julia, what are your thoughts?
Hey, I'm actually really happy I got to go close to last, because it was really nice hearing everybody else here, because my thoughts kept changing as I heard everyone else speak on this. So yeah, the banner that goes across, and we see do your best every day. That's true success to me, that I'm feeling accomplished and content and satisfied with my work every day, with how I help others, with how I inspire others, with my own like personal goals, whether they're fitness or education or whatever it may be. But I think that our goals, and as we evolve over the years, our goals change and our ideas of success change. So, earlier on, we might go all in on something. I know I have, and I know some of the others spoke to that too, where you're kind of okay. You realize you're going to sacrifice, or maybe you don't realize at the time, but we end up sacrificing other important parts of our lives because we're just tunnel vision and all in on whatever the bucket list is, or whatever we're working towards, education, degree, anything like that. And that does start to change as we get older and we feel a bit more accomplished. I find that that does start to change. And now we can look back, at least I feel that I'm in a place now where I can look back and feel really balanced and accomplished in many facets of life, but understanding that I made certain sacrifices to achieve certain things. And I have to just be content with that, because it's not that you can't have it all, but you might not have it to the certain level, like world championship in, level in everything that you want to do, but being content with yourself and what we do to inspire and help others. So once you're in a place that you can really give back to be able to do that, because being able to do that for others is so much more satisfying down the road than just achievement for ourselves, I feel.
Absolutely. Sean, got any thoughts?
I do. That was fantastic. A lot of those thoughts are thoughts that run through my head as well. And when I first saw Kathy and the sign directly behind her when she was introducing herself, I thought, yeah, that's it. That's it for me. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to do. And very similar to Kathy, I didn't always have a good balance. The things that I've pursued in my life were kind of hard to get. And so I had to pour myself into them with a singular focus to some degree in order to execute against them. And then as soon as I executed against it, I was switching focus to the next thing, the next mountain, the next task, the next thing that I wanted to crush, because I was a relentless pursuer of excellence. But I kind of got lost in the pursuit of excellence rather than in the pursuit of life. And so to Kathy's point, and I wouldn't mind talking about this to some degree, I'd like to hear everyone's opinion on it. That, like Kathy, I pursued so hard that it required all of those mistakes, those mismanaged focuses, particular focuses, that I'm finally at a point now where I have a much better sense of how to do it for others. Because I was doing it for myself, but not doing it for others as much as I should have been. But all of those mistakes that I made now allow me to do it better for others. And so that key word to me, inspiration, or trying to inspire others to be better, is generally what I try to do every day now. Not always well, but that's my focus. So my point is this: in order for me to better understand how to do things better, I categorize it against how poorly I was doing my singular focuses in the past while I was pursuing excellence, while I was pursuing what I had in mind. So maybe Kathy, could you start off with how you contextualized doing it poorly and now doing it way better kind of thing, or maybe the things that have helped you shift in that direction, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was very much blinders on, head down, hair straight back, get the goals no matter what. And, certainly involving judo in, the 80s in my teens, where I was being pushed not just by my own self, but coaches and Judo Canada and Team Canada and such, to cut weight, to make the next 2 weight categories below my own weight, things like that, weren't healthy, but made me just, drive harder. And the more that I was driven and people would drive me, I would drive harder. And, I completely had zero social connections, and I was not a good, well-balanced teenager, that's for sure. And so then I'm very all or nothing. So as soon as, they made the announcement about the Olympics, I went and crashed completely, so that they weren't going to bring them in 88. They're in 92. And then I just quit completely. And I didn't just at that point stop and slowly, help my club or just sit back on, I just stopped. I quit. I burned my gis and moved to Japan full time. So I was pretty extreme about things, but, I needed that, I think, to get over that toxicity that I was experiencing and having no life. And then, that reflected later when I went back to judo competitively. It was an Olympic girls reunion. We all came back together, and then they challenged me, and that was it. I was back in full time, in masters judo this time, but full in competing and running my own club and full on, and too much so that I got that competitive bug too much again. And yeah, I just, completely ignored my husband and other things that were going on in my life. And yay, I won some world championships and then joined Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and won some world championships there or whatever. But, you know, I was never happy. I was never satisfied. And I'd get to the mountain and it would be maybe achieved that week's refrigerator goal or that year. And then it would be just rip that down, put up a new one. And I can't actually live without a refrigerator goal sitting there and tempting me and dragging, you know, dangling the carrot. And I felt unhappy all the time, even when I achieved what I needed to achieve. So in starting my own club and then talking to all my students over those couple of years of first starting up my own club, the realization started to hit me that none of my accomplishments mean anything. And these kids, you know, for them to achieve, and I tried at the beginning to be very, very driving them. And then I realized there's so many really fun, recreational young kids that just need a mentor and some inspiring and to be good people. It's nothing to do with, and they can achieve that by just maybe getting their next belt grading through, and they'll never compete in a tournament in their life, or getting, you know, that next step of a throw achieved or whatever. You know, it's got to be small steps for some people, and recreational is totally fine. And you'll all get to your black belt eventually, regardless of ever even entering a competition. And so I think at that point is when I went into that mind shift and started realizing there's more to life, and almost losing my marriage made a difference as well. Mm-hmm. Certainly. And there were other pinnacle moments, but that, as well as I switched from being a stunt performer. That's what I've done for 38 years on and off as a stunt performer in the film industry. I switched recently to becoming a stunt coordinator. Now I have to support the stunt girl that I'm helping, like I had to support as a sensei my students. And now all of a sudden that mind shift really helped me, help them be better. It's nothing about me. I just have to hold the pads, you know, while they do the stair fall. And I just say 3, 2, 1 action, and they take the hit. And so now I'm just a supporting person to make them look good and make them shine. And I honestly started to feel so much better about my life. Like, it made such a difference. I was like, I want to be the one holding the pads. I want them to look good. And then I got gratification when they got a pat on the back. And when I saw that I had way more happiness out of them achieving success, not me, that's when my shift happened, I think, for me. And that's all I want to do now.
Yeah.
I'm going to interject because I need everyone to know I was doing some research on everybody, and Kathy actually got to do like scenes with Jackie Chan. And I think I saw some stuff with Rumble in the Bronx, and that's amazing. Yeah. So I'm
that old.
Quietly have to fangirl to myself right now.
I'm fanning girl on you, Tanya.
Thanks.
Yeah, Jackie's awesome. He's very cool and good to work with.
But I would say that in order for you to really appreciate holding the pads and doing these things for your stunt girls or stunt performers, you've had to take those hits. I mean, that's basically a paraphrasing of what Sean was saying, that you had to go and take those hits and do these experiences and understand the cost in order to impart that knowledge to other people and to kind of, in a sense, save them from certain pains and probably allow them to take some bumps and bruises themselves. So that's, you know, I would say that's part of the cost in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Anybody else got thoughts on that? For sure, throw somebody on the fire. Kate, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Tanya. Like, you have to have been in that position to kind of appreciate what those people go through, right? And then at the same time, I'm sure they appreciate it that much more that the person who's holding the pads or the person who's directing them has been there, because they understand that, right? Like, you don't really, I don't know, it's hard to have someone in a position of leadership who hasn't been in your shoes or hasn't had those experiences, because they just don't have that level of understanding.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts? I'm just going to pick on somebody.
I just had questions.
Yeah, by all means, hit it, Tanya.
Yeah, I'm just, I guess Chance has asked me to be unofficial co-host. Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the instances, and hopefully Sean's okay with me sharing this story, when we first started becoming friends, and he was I think getting to the point of like maybe giving some guidance to this wayward lady. I remember just looking at him, and he had offered something of value, of course. And I looked at him, I'm like, you seem like, and I say this with love, you seem like you've screwed up more times than I ever have in my life in terms of making mistakes and getting experience. Like, that means you are someone well worth listening to. You've taken those hits. You've gone through all different kinds of paths. And like I said, it does seem to be part of the process. And and that's that point. And then I had a question in regards to, let me look here. I was wondering, for, I guess, all the amazing women on this panel, was how much of it was intentionality and how much of it was kind of, I don't know if it's curiosity or happenstance, kind of the process. And to to quote the philosopher Dolly Parton, you find out who you are and you do it on purpose. Right. And I'm wondering how much of it was innate and how much of it was just like, oh, hey, jiu-jitsu sounds cool, I'm going to check this out. And I'd love to hear from you ladies.
Let's put Rebecca up first. What do you think?
That's a great question. It's hard. I started my journey so young. My parents put me in gymnastics at age 3, and that was obviously long before I made any decisions for myself. And that, for me, that was the springboard intended for this journey of strength, personal development. And over the years, I've kind of found my way. I think curiosity in terms of like, how far can I push myself? What's the next challenge I can take on? For me, it's always been, it started out physical strength, and then the mental aspect came later. And so I'm always looking to push myself, push my limits, push the envelope on both of those things. But it was largely physical at first, and then the mental aspect came later. I think there has to be some degree of curiosity, but also some degree of intentionality. Like, you don't achieve great things. You don't get to the top in anything without being very intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. And so I think there has to be that intrinsic level of motivation. You have to want to show up even when you don't feel like it. Like, the difference between discipline and motivation. You know, people always ask, like, what's the secret to staying motivated all the time? Well, you're not going to be motivated all the time, but you have to show up and put in the work regardless. And that comes with a serious degree of intentionality. But in terms of like where the path will take us, I think that element of curiosity is also really important in continuing the journey and just kind of seeing where that path goes.
Mm-hmm. Brenda, you got thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't mind actually just going back to that other piece when you were mentioning, you know, the things that you have to do to fail forward. I phrase it as that because I think it's innate, like it's inherent to all of us that we're going to make mistakes in some manner or another. And it's what we actually do with it, right? So how do we learn from it? What do we need to do differently? And, you know, when I hear about the cost of, you know, the relationships, I also think that one of the comments that was made earlier is the choice to shed them as well. So, you know, with my marriage, it absolutely cost that, partly because, you know, we went to kindergarten together. So I would imagine communication and growth over time, that's just one of those things that you have to navigate. And then with the boys, you know, as I was mentioning earlier, you're not, for me as an individual, being in such a public type of profession historically, and being in those fish bubbles, because that is very much what they are. Like, you're literally in this glass bubble and everybody is saying and you know, commenting and so forth. It's also about creating that resiliency and ability to navigate your way through it. And I say navigate because it's not always easy, right? I mean, you know, when you start factoring some of the media pieces that come and, you know, that onslaught of individuals that have a perspective or judgment and so forth, you know, it's the courage to make mistakes and yet pick yourself up and keep moving through that, whether it's on a personal or professional level. So I didn't mean to jump back. It was just that I wanted to share that from, you know, myself and the experiences that I've had. I think the other motivator for me as an individual has been, well, you can't do it. She can't do it. She's come from, you know, this type of an environment. So all that did was give me far more motivation as well, you know, as I was starting to progress through my career. And, you know, that tunnel vision does take over. I think when you're AAA personality or A personality or anywhere in between, you know, you're likely going to want to do well, whatever you're doing. And again, you know, some of the motivation that I had was, by way of example, when I was training to become an incident commander, I worked with a group of individuals that said, she's not going to achieve that. How is she possibly going to achieve it? All I did was work harder. So there's that motivation as well. And then, you know, coming back to the question currently, I think for myself, it is about curiosity, always being curious. You know, I often get teased about, are you writing a book? Because I'm incredibly inquisitive. But I also think that there's been intention to it. As I mentioned, you know, growing up in a community where there's such interconnectedness in everything that you do, it's from the things like harvesting a moose. So there's many aspects of individuals that play certain roles, whether it's hide tanning and so forth, or, you know, butchering it and then making sure that you're doling it out into the community the way that you're supposed to. And for myself, it was very intentional to get into some type of a policing and public safety role. And it was, you know, intentional that I started to lean in hard, and with that balance of trying to fulfill family obligations as well as, you know, do well at what I was doing, because it always felt like I had to fight that. You know, she's in these positions because of her ethnicity and or that she's a woman. So for me, you know, it was always about making sure the foot was on the gas, but trying to create that balance. So I don't think it was happenstance for me in any way. It was always about the inquisitive nature of my personality and then leaning in hard.
Like that. Julia, how about yourself?
When I look back to like my humble beginnings, I guess, I can't say that I ever expected I'd be where I am today. So a lot of things I did just kind of, I was also very curious, but it's evolved. I never expected to travel the world. I never expected I would work with the UN, to meet and work with, you know, some of the people I've had the opportunity to work with, to now be at a point of competing for so long, on, you know, the world championship stage, and then now to be coaching others. I would have never expected that. So that just kind of evolved over time. I grew up in not a small town. It seemed like a town back then, but it was just a smaller city outside of Toronto. It was Guelph. And, we grew up in government funded housing. I didn't have any kind of lessons. I had never left Ontario. So it's, when I look back, like that child would have never, ever imagined even leaving Ontario or ever owning my own place or seeing half the countries I've seen, or I wouldn't have had the confidence to think that I could do any of those things. So that helps me now as a coach and helping others, because it really helps me encourage others to believe in themselves no matter where they come from. Like, you never know. Be curious, and pursue your dreams, because you can achieve more than you could ever imagine. So I didn't have that vision. Like, it wasn't a clear vision by no means. It's just evolved, and now I feel like, oh, I do deserve this. I definitely deserve to be here. But that happened over time.
Absolutely.
I wasn't that kid.
Julie, how about yourself?
Great point so far. I mean, following up with what Julia just said, yeah, I mean, I never thought I would be a coach either until Sean decided to retire and pass the reins over to myself. So that was something that wasn't necessarily, I thought I would see myself down the road doing this role either. But having back to the original question that Tanya posed in terms of curiosity, or do you move forward with purpose, intention? I would say initially when I started racing, definitely was moving forward with intention and purpose, just kind of that tunnel vision, one goal, one milestone after the other. But I would say over the last few years, I definitely still move forward with purpose and intention, but I've also become more curious. How can I do it better? And having more of a growth mindset. You know, what did I do last time perhaps that worked or didn't work? And how can I learn from my failures and move forward, more being curious and open to new ideas and suggestions in terms of how I can do it better and how I can help others to perhaps learn from my mistakes and do it better themselves.
Kate, how about yourself?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think about Chris Hadfield's book when I heard this question, because he talks about how when he was like 8 years old, he decided that he wanted to become an astronaut. So then everything he did after that was just like, how will this enhance or not enhance? I don't know. How will this help me become an astronaut in the future? And he was very focused on that. And that definitely was not me growing up. I think I changed my mind all the time about what I wanted to be. I don't think I ever saw myself joining the military. You know, in my early 20s, I was like failing out of art school in Toronto, just not really working any jobs that I enjoyed or I didn't feel like I had any purpose. So I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And then I just sort of happened to start scuba diving, and my instructor was a diver in the Navy. And then that opened a lot of doors for me. And then once I got to that role, then things became more intentional. And then it became like, oh, okay, I want to do this course in the military. What do I need to do to achieve that? But definitely before that and growing up, there was nothing intentional or purposeful about anything I was doing.
Okay. Kathy, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if anything was like innate, really. I don't really have any innate judo abilities or skills, but certainly, yeah, intention had a factor in it for sure, because I just knew, for whatever driving reason, that'll have to be a therapy session one day, figure out what the driving reason might be. But from a young age, I always just wanted to, kind of win everything. And that was just a driving force. It happened to be, I ended up in judo because of my brothers. And then I wanted to beat them, and then not just beat them, but, beat them up at home, but also beat them like in competition level. And, my first trophy when I got it was just like slept with it, the whole thing, 7 years old, and in the boys division. And so it was just sort of that was the catalyst. I knew that I could make something of myself or be somebody if I could just keep winning. And I guess that's why it's been that way for most of my life, that direction. But it certainly wasn't via skill or innate ability, because often when I step out on the mat, I've got way less technique and I've got way less ability than most of the girls, I would say, in any division I've ever entered. But I have this mental capacity that I have to win. And I think I have more strong mental capacity than all my opponents. And sometimes that just carries me through. So I think it's been somewhat intentional, but being unintentional. So I didn't set out for this to happen, but I had a driving force of some sort that made my purpose intentional. And now I'm stepping back from that a lot more, like I said earlier, trying to find more balance. And I kind of have this 80-20 principle that if you're happy 80% of the time and just 20% of the time you're not doing whatever you're doing, then you can get through and keep doing that activity. And it doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to be always 100 and 0 like I've lived my life. So I try to live that 80-20 almost with everything now. And it seems to be getting me through.
Like it. Sean, you got any thoughts on any of that?
I do. So to some of the commonalities in the conversation on this particular subject, I'll use myself as an example. So I'm told that at the age of 5, I just wanted to be a soldier. I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to be that thing. And so I started moving towards getting into the military. I was in the Army Cadets. I did lots of stuff to kind of get my head in the game, as it were. But I didn't understand the game, so I was just a kid doing my best. And when I entered into the military, I had lots of drive. I have a certain sense of drive, similar to maybe Kathy, in the sense of I'm highly competitive. But I'm competitive more so with myself than the people around me. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you step up and say, let's go, we're freaking gonna go. So I am a competitor, no doubt, but I compete hard against myself every day, expecting more or better performances out of myself versus yesterday. So to my point, when I got into JTF Tour, into Tier 1, I then got married. And my marriage did not survive because I went through a divorce, more clearly, because my focus was on the team, not on myself, not on my wife, not on my relationships, not on balance, not on anything. My focus was national, strategic asset, and kick-ass. And so I subordinated everything to that task. And the collateral damage from that was the fallout of my marriage. And I don't want to categorize whether that was the right price to pay or not. It just simply is the past now. But moving forward, as I move through my various careers, it was that taught me I have to get better balance for myself, because the person that I am, I have to be extremely cautious with what I engage in. So if I decide that I'm going to learn how to make the best fried egg sandwich in the world, get out of my way. I'm going to hyper focus on creating the best fried egg sandwich. And I might not ever be the world champion at it, but I will claw myself up towards that podium as best as I can. And so BJJ is an example. Before I started it just on my 52nd birthday, I thought, well, I've been martial artist for over 40 years. I knew what I was kind of getting into. But before I went to that first night, I thought, well, this is another 10-year project, because that's how my brain thinks. I'm not a dabbler, so I have to be extremely cautious on what I engage in. I have to be very intentional as to the long-term project that I'm about to step into, because I know what I'm like. I commit hard and sometimes a little blinderish. I do sometimes put the blinders on to the cost of those around me. So the cost of success, if you will, is me hyper focused on not only kicking ass, my own and anyone else around me, but kicking ass for the team. Because to Julie's point, when I retired from my 15 years of high performance race coaching to come and do podcasting, what the heck? When I passed that torch on to Julie, I knew she was the right person for it. I'd been watching it for ages. And so, to my point, it's one thing to hyper focus and have collateral damage all around you, but it's an entirely different thing to keep an eye out for the people that you can pass the torch on to, so that then you can move into that next phase of your life. And that is only something that I realized like not too long ago. Even though I've worked with, in my 7th career now, even though I worked with multiple groups through multiple careers to mentor and lead and all of that good stuff, it's only been semi-recently that I've realized that now my job is to set it up for others to do the things that I'm trying to do now for myself and others. So I don't think the learning process or the trying to do better process ever stops. I mean, I'm trying to do it better than I did it yesterday. So I can't see that changing tomorrow. I don't think there's any algorithm that you can scribble on a piece of paper and say, oh, well, there it is. That's life all figured out. I think it just comes down to doing your best as you try to better understand yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may add,
Jump in.
I think the common thread that I'm seeing in everybody is that while it may not be inherently intentional, like not everyone is seeing a soldier at age 5 and going, that's what I'm going to be. I think that perhaps unconsciously that there are just inherent traits, like Kathy wanted to win. She wanted to beat her brothers, and on the mats and at home. And for myself, I think I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. I think that was my big thing. I think I'm getting closer and closer to that. And I realize how actually accurate it is, somewhere between a Ninja Turtle and an artist. And in the moment, I didn't see there was any intentionality to my choices. In hindsight, there definitely were, because I would have these weird, like, art intensive training camps that I'd direct by myself. I would just go to my grandparents in the summer and just draw nonstop, like 10 hours a day. I'm like, this is how you get good at drawing. I'd ask peers, and these cranky old illustrators would tell me what to do, and I just went and bought the art books, and I would just grind all, like, no one told me what to do. No one told me to do it, actually. And I see that trait in me and how it's carried me through life, and what seemed like kind of things happening by random, I could see that they ended up being actually, in a sense, like a subconscious choices. Because I bought a camera for Christmas one year, and I was like, I'll test it out at my gym. I don't know why I chose to test it out at TriStar, but then it ended up being a photography career of sorts. I met this wiry guy with glasses at the Roslyn Jiu Jitsu gym who seemed interesting. And I don't know why I was drawn to him. And then, he became, I guess, a mentor of sorts. And it's led me to really interesting places in life. And I think that there are perhaps not inherent abilities, but inherent qualities in each one of you women that lead you to become like the best in your field. Or or at the very least to do your best in whatever domain that you choose. And Chance, it's okay if I keep going?
Yeah, give her.
Cool. And I was kind of curious with, I call it Slumdog Millionaire, because there's cost to learning things, there's cost to abandoning things, and sometimes those costs are delayed. Sometimes you don't realize this choice that I've made was actually a boon, or something that would bite me in the butt later on. And I'm just wondering if you had experiences where, and let me know if I'm getting off track, but if you have had experiences where this one choice that you made ended up paying off later in life or costing you.
That's a great question. Kate, let's start with you.
I feel like I've been picked on a lot lately. Maybe it should be someone else. I don't know if I really have nothing that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, the main thing, one of the big costs for like being in the military and doing maybe some of the more difficult jobs is like the cost that the toll it takes on your body. And I'm having a lot of like hip and back issues now that probably, like, maybe if I had done better at, keeping up with mobility and prehab kind of exercises beforehand, then I wouldn't be dealing with this. But now I've sort of hit that wall where like doing some things is like very difficult for me. So that's kind of what I can think of just off the top of my head.
Awesome. Brenda, let's go to you.
Yeah, there's so many. That's I think it's selecting one that's, I think so. By way of example, I had no intention of ever going to Ottawa. When I was in the Yukon, and then I made my way down to British Columbia and spent my first tenure in BC, and I was up in Prince George. I mean, life was great. I was running Prince George Detachment. I was an incident commander going out with the ERT teams. I was a trained negotiator working in the municipality at that time. Things were incredibly dynamic. There was all kinds of gang wars and stuff that had been, forced up the highway, if you will, out of the Lower Mainland. So it was fun. And when I was asked to go to Ottawa, I immediately resisted. I said I had no interest in going to Ottawa and being at headquarters. And the position they were asking me to participate in a competition for was as the Director General of National Aboriginal Policing and Crime Prevention. Well, I was in an operational role. Why would I want to go and do something like that? That wasn't at all of interest to me. And so I called my supervisor at the time, Barry Clark, who has retired in Prince George, and he said, Brenda, I think you should go do a tour there. It'll give you a different perspective of life within headquarters, and it'll also open many other doors for you. And so at first I could not see it, and it wasn't something that I had any interest, as I mentioned. But because I trusted him, because I had worked with him for 6 years, and I knew that his experience and him as a mentor, that he wouldn't lead me down the garden path, that certainly go compete. And then I went home and had a little family get together with my sons. And right at that same time, or within that same time period, my middle son was diagnosed with MS. And so as much as he was getting care within Prince George, it was also important for me to go to a place where, you know, he would probably get a little bit better care. And I'm not saying anything negative. I'm just saying that within Prince George, those care pieces have evolved exponentially. But that was also a motivating factor. And I think the other piece was my youngest son said to me, Mom, we've been in Prince George. I'm sick and tired of it. Like, get on the plane, win the competition so we can move. So on I went, and, you know, that turned out well for me. I did go to Ottawa for about 16 months. And again, you know, making my way through this inertia, what I felt was inertia, because when you take somebody who's so passionate about being in the field, working with, you know, the different variety of individuals that I was, and just incredibly not only motivated, but it was satisfactory. Like I had a lot of satisfaction in that moment. So to go to a place where it's highly administrative, and as well as, you know, trying to learn the ins and outs of, you know, the external and internal politics and all those things. I know that we're not going to talk about that, but for me, it was an entirely different experience. But what came of it down the road was something that was amazing for me. What came of it is that I was able to learn all those foundational aspects, pockets, pardon me, and, you know, understand the inner workings of it. Because within probably 6 months of being there, I was asked to go on an international learning program, which I did with 23 other cohorts from across the globe, and had experiences with all of those senior executives, as well as, you know, did visits within Singapore, The Hague, Italy, you name it. And from a policing and public safety perspective, that was probably one of the most fascinating things I was able to participate in with that lens. The other piece is I came back from that 9 months as I was still working, but, you know, we were doing this learning cohort over a period of 9 months. And I came and met with the former commissioner, Bob Polson. And I thought I was going into his office to present this final product of our learning. And he said to me, he's like, BBC, he goes, yeah, he goes, so, you know, I have this a little position here in Saskatchewan. It's called criminal operations officer. What do you think? What do you think about going there? And from there, the moment I said yes to that, and in his office, it wasn't a hesitation whatsoever, because I was going back out into the field. But the key piece for me was where it took me after that. So not only was I a criminal operations officer, I became the commanding officer of Saskatchewan. And then I went to BC as the criminal operations officer and became the commanding officer of there. So those moments of resistance, I think for me, was also another teaching or learning point, that when they materialize, it's about understanding when to say yes, and then, you know, taking advantage of those opportunities. So that would be one of the key lessons for myself. And, you know, also I think about the competitiveness, because there is, I think it's inherent that for those of us that succeed and really want to drive things forward, we have to be a bit competitive, and we have to get, you know, our heads right with the decisions that we make, and then take those leaps of opportunities.
Kathy, sorry, I had myself on mute because I was pouring myself a drink. But go ahead, Kathy. What are your thoughts?
Well, I actually had a question. I don't know if switching subjects or not, but of the ladies, because I'm so impressed with this panel of ladies. They're unreal. Just their feelings on imposter syndrome. And, you know, when you get up to this, I don't know, successful level or whatever, then you just don't feel it. You don't feel successful at all. And you really shouldn't be there. Even just being here with a panel of you ladies is like, what am I doing here? You know, do you guys feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to interrupt because my first post on Instagram, when I saw the lineup, was like, oh my God, why am I here? What am I doing here? And as I'm researching all of the women, I'm like, extra, why am I here? But yeah, just long and short of it, yes, very much so. And I'd love to hear from the rest of you ladies on the panel.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I actually sent Seb a message, and I was like, this lineup is like insane. Like, I haven't really, you know, like I have a I don't know, a cool job, but I haven't really like achieved that much. And like, I'm not any sort of star athlete, and I'm, not as fit as I want to be. And I'm like a 0 stripe white belt in jujitsu. So I definitely was feeling the imposter syndrome. And then even reading the comments here, like Sach wrote, for all the ladies, do you feel you had to reach a certain level of like success before you could be ready to feel like leveling up others? And like, even now it's like, why am I here? Like, I don't really have too much like, I don't feel like I've achieved a level of success where I could be like I'm not like, I guess, telling others what to do with my podcast. I'm trying to just like share other people's stories, but I still feel the imposter syndrome for sure, like all the time.
Any other thoughts? Julia? Let's go Julia, and then I'll go Julie.
Yeah, all the time, every day. I actually reached out to Tanya from her message. So we talked about this earlier today. So I saw what she posted about imposter syndrome, and I'm like, hey, right there with you all the time. But yeah, and I think that comes with, I think, understanding that many of us do feel that way. So I do know a lot of other high-level coaches that I really admire and respect, and just understanding that they feel that way too. And so we're all really the same in the end. And we feel that way because we want to deliver our best. We want to be our best, and because we care. So that's a great place to start. So we're all here for the right reasons. And in the end, as long as we're doing our best, I don't know. I think understanding we're all going to be the same that way. When it comes to, we're talking about before, achievements, and I was always hard on myself, I'll be honest, because I was so scatterbrained. And I still am. There's so many things that I want to do. And so I feel like I had a bit of imposter syndrome over not accomplishing, a certain high level of education, or not being my best, like even in aviation. I started my pilot's license, but I got bored. I liked the spins, slips, and spiral dives. I liked aerobatics. I liked that. I liked the fun stuff. I didn't want to sit there in a cockpit for 7 hours flying to Europe. I didn't. It was boring. So I would feel bad being like, oh, I'm just a flight attendant. That's all I did, even though I have higher education and I was, had all these other ideas. But in the end, with my personality and what that job let me achieve and gave me the free time to travel and the free time off to achieve my fitness goals as well, it was the best decision for me. And for my personality, when I was the only flight attendant on board on like high level VIP flights, I'm very happy that I was the one in the cabin chatting with some of these awesome passengers that I got to know them so well compared to sitting in the flight deck. So I would feel bad about that, but I later understood there was a reason that I ended up where I did. And then I got my high level achievements in other avenues. I didn't have to be the one flying the plane. So that helped.
I can totally, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
I can totally relate to all of that.
Right.
And
where are we? There we go.
what?
Not me.
You're
it might
good.
be
All right.
Rebecca.
I grabbed the wrong person. You go ahead.
All good. So
Right.
I can totally relate to everything that was just said in terms of imposter syndrome. And I feel it every day. I think it's pretty normal for high achievers and type A personalities who always want to strive for more. But for me specifically, I wanted to serve in the military, and I wasn't able to because I have a chronic disease that's disqualifying for all branches of service. And that's always just like really eaten away at me for over the years. I mean, this was like 14 years ago that I tried to join, but as I've gone through life, my husband has been in the Marine Corps for 18 years. A lot of the friends in the circle that I have are like high achieving military personnel. My closest friends are all special operators. And I found myself in this circle, ironically, just with a lot of military personnel. And I still have that feeling of like, my story is, I couldn't serve in the military. And I feel like that's a part of my identity was like me still wishing I could. And as a result of like the people that I surround myself with, I always feel like my story is not good enough to share because I didn't go to war. I haven't seen combat. I haven't had this trauma that all my friends share in their personal stories. And I've had to work through a lot of that. And I still kind of feel it like my story is not as cool or not as good or not as traumatic as all these other people who I'm really inspired by, and feeling like I don't have a seat at the table. And my friends always have to reassure me that you don't have to have served in the military or gone to war to have a story worth sharing. And it's still something I grapple with every day. And, you know, I haven't achieved some of those things. I don't have the combat action ribbons and that sort of thing, but I just try to live my life and feel and show up in such a way that I can, and remind myself that I still, even though I didn't go to war and I didn't serve, I still have a story worth sharing, and I can still empower and impact other people's lives by sharing my authentic self. And so I just have to remind myself of that every day, and I'll just keep showing up because just having grown a social media following and getting messages every single day from people who saying I inspired them to show up and go to the gym that day, or to get off the couch, or to work through a difficult situation in their relationships because of the strength that I show and sharing my story. It's pretty cool to see, like when you just are you and you own that, the power that you can have regardless of where you have or haven't been. So I just share
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Julie, how about yourself? Got any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. It's hard to keep up, becoming
Right.
in and out. I'll address the imposter syndrome to begin with. And I think as everyone said, we all have it. And, you know, the more you get on in life, probably it seems to be increased rather than reduced. And the expectations that come competing at a high level or operating at a high level, they just continue on. I mean, same thing. I was terrified the first time I was on the collective, because I think I was with a couple of Green Berets and I thought, what am I doing on this panel? And I was terrified. And same with today. I mean, I probably would have been more terrified. And now that I know how badass everyone here is. So, you know, that's something that I think everyone struggles with, imposter syndrome. I would like to go back to the initial question that was raised
Absolutely.
a while ago with Tanya, when you said, was there a mistake or something that you did in the past that sort of bit you in the ass later on? And I think it's something important to share. And I would say for myself, something that really bit me in the ass as an athlete was not eating enough. So for anyone who's listening or familiar with RED-S, relevant energy disorder in sport. So it was something that bit me in the ass last year. I wasn't recovering. I wasn't performing at the level that I wanted to, and I couldn't understand why. And Sean had addressed this with me years ago, and, you know, brought up all the points, and I read all through the literature that he sent me, and I thought, well, no, that's not me. I didn't have a growth mindset. It was more closed, tunnel vision, and looking at all the statistics and thinking, oh, I only have one of these things, so this is not me. So it wasn't until it bit me in the ass last year that I actually did something about it and started to eat more and perform more. So I think it's important to share, because then I've been able to now be more mindful of it and to share with young athletes coming into sport, or they are in sport. I'm currently mentoring a young girl out of Cranbrook through the Ride Like a Girl program. And now I find that it's very important for me to share that with her, as well as other young girls coming into sport, that you do need to address these things. And it's become more open. But, you know, back in the day, it was quite common, but people just, you know, thought, well, that's just part of it. Losing menstruation, these kind of things, that's just part of being in sport and a young athlete. And so I think it's important to just get that out in the open. And for me, it was able to move myself forward, but also to mentor and help other girls be open to chatting about it, and knowing that some of these issues are not normal, that it's probably a deficiency, you're not eating enough. And that's why you may have loss of menstruation, low energy, not sleeping, not performing, these sort of ramifications.
Mm-hmm. This is kind of a random thing that just kind of kicked into my head, but you and Kate should link up and have ride and shoot like a girl, and then you could be a bunch of badass chicks roaming around on mountain bikes with rifles. It'd be outstanding. I'd be all over that.
I also
That sounds awesome, kind of dangerous, but you never
right.
know.
It's
I
super
have
safe. Sorry,
super
Chance,
safe.
go ahead.
Totally, absolutely. Yeah, no, I just have a couple comments that I wanted to hit on real quick, and there's a couple questions, and then we'll get into that in a second. So, first off, Octavian says, "Amazing initiative to make this panel of badass happen." Girlfriend will be listening to this one for sure. Satch did put in this question for all the ladies. Do you feel you've had to reach a certain level of success before you could be ready to feel like leveling up others? And we're going to get into that in a second. But I just wanted to make sure I hit this other pieces real quick. JK says, I'm a recent follower of Kathy's. It means a lot to have you all as role models for women over 25, 35, 45. And way to transition and continue your growth, Kathy. So we got some awesome people. Seb's in the house again. It says temporary obsession is necessary to reach the top. Temporary being the key word, and I think that's a big one. He goes on with imposter syndrome afflicts mostly high performers. The key is to override it with what you know you bring to the game. You ladies absolutely deserve to be there, notwithstanding who's done what. Satch says 100% agree. Seb, these women on these panel are exceptional. So any other thoughts or comments, or Tanya, do you want to direct this?
I just had silly comments in terms of how Chance and I both belong to the club of eat enough protein for like a 9-year-old girl. So that's the club that we belonged to for a while until we got that sorted out. But in regards to, I'm just trying to think. Actually, Chance, take over for a sec. My brain is at a blank.
Okay, so let's go back to
Chance.
this. Yes.
I wouldn't mind throwing in my 2 cents.
By
here.
all means.
Just a couple of things. One is on the imposter syndrome. I think I've been pretty clear in the past over a number of different podcasts that I suffer from from imposter syndrome. But suffering is a strong word I'm throwing out there to make the point. I suffered from it until I got a grip on it. And so I've had a really, really strong imposter syndrome drive as long as I can remember. And it's what's driven me to the heights that I've achieved, whatever minor heights they've been. It drove me to never settle. It drove me to feel like I had to earn my spot at the table every day. That's just the way I've always felt. And the imposter syndrome term was completely new to me. In fact, I think it was Seb that was the first one to say, hey, you got a little bit of imposter syndrome going on there. I was like, what? What are you talking about? But upon reflection, of course, the terminology imposter syndrome totally makes sense to me. So right now, like, I can't even believe I'm in a podcasting because I don't feel like I belong in front of a microphone. And everyone knows that that's my way. I just don't feel like I should be podcasting. But I take faith in the fact that people keep saying, keep on keeping on. And I believe that that is the message out of imposter syndrome is whether you believe in yourself or not, or whether you believe that committing to the process in front of you is correct or not, you just got to do it. You just got to do it. You just got to commit. You just got to believe that the voices in your head are nonsense and that you can go kick ass. And I can understand that as I look back over the last few decades and realize that, yeah, it does make sense. It does play out that way. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work to understand that process. And so I'd like to use Rebecca's story to some degree to illustrate that. So I've been watching Rebecca ever since she first came on our podcast, and watching her lead up to the Nationals. She had a rough go of it. And what I really appreciated about Rebecca's path towards that Nationals was the fact that she was sick. She was underperforming. She was kind of bummed about how things were playing out, but she kept a really good mindset. She kept positive. And when she just competed on the weekend, like her write-up was inspiring to me, man. Like, I just thought, yeah, good on you, Rebecca, for setting such an awesome standard of how to do things in a righteous way, to send a positive message to encourage others in these hard moments that don't focus on the negatives, focus on the positives, etc. So for the imposter syndrome, sometimes you've just got to shut down the negativity and understand that focusing on the positivity of the moment is enough to get you through the moment, as it were.
Okay. Yeah, and for me, it's as much as I don't believe in, looking for external approval. What really helped me overcome my imposter syndrome was a friend who's Olympic wrestler. She mentioned, she's like, I value my time. I've met all sorts of wonderful people, and I still and it sounds, I'm going to do my best with the phrasing, and I find you worth speaking to. And the joke in this is, if Sean is willing to talk to me still, it's a decent litmus test for getting, whether or not I am doing my best, because he seems very exacting about that. But it is actually really helpful to look at your circle and being like, wow, I'm surrounded by badasses. I may not necessarily be a badass in the way that they are, but I'm doing my own thing. I'm telling my story, and if I'm doing my best and keeping this kind of company, I'm probably not doing that poorly. And I think that's something really, really helpful. That was really helpful for me.
That's a great point. It really, if you're suffering from imposter syndrome, look at your circle, right? And there's that old quote, I can tell who you are by your 5 closest friends, something like that, of the fact that your circle really does define you. And if you're surrounded by awesome people, you're probably one of them. Right? That's a pretty simple thought pattern. Any thoughts on anything we've gone over so far before we hit this question from Satch? Anybody?
Sure. It's Brenda.
Yep.
So yeah, for myself, in terms of the circle, I know, like, I'm mindful not to be repetitive, but I would also say that it's incredible and incredibly important to ensure that you're surrounding yourself with not people just like yourself, but diverse individuals, and that those that are going to motivate you as well as inspire you and frankly check you, right? So if you start going down a path that maybe isn't the best path for you, whether that's on a personal or professional level, that they're actually going to be able to say, listen, you may want to reconsider that they actually have the courage as well. So I think, the diversity of that circle is important, because through the course of my professional career and, personally as well, I've witnessed many individuals that will surround themselves with like-minded people, but that's all you get. And, when you're sitting in key roles, I think it's, again, important that you're very careful in terms of how you're selecting individuals, right? But also that you have the courage of ensuring that you're creating that diversity of thought, experience, and all of those aspects. And, in terms of one of the items that was just said here, it's about getting your mind right? And, that mental fortitude and the ability to overcome whatever is a challenge or, a different type of experience that you might be having, and then deciding, no, I've got to go this way. It's getting your head wrapped around the fact that you have to do something a little bit differently, and or that, in able to persevere, that you've got the mindset to do it. So those are the two pieces that I just wanted to follow up on.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts before we move on to something else?
Yeah,
Tanya?
I always have thoughts. I would say, like, in regards to what Brenda and Rebecca just said, that while it can be easy to feel out of place because I'm not military or I'm not these things, I think it's also really important to recognize that they need you, in a sense, the diversity, because they need to learn that strength and integrity and all these other values that we all try to embody, they come in different forms. And it is really good for all the people around us to understand that strength isn't always necessarily portrayed in one way. Resilience isn't always demonstrated in one way. And the more you open your mind to that, just the more growth and the more potential that you can achieve.
Absolutely. Anybody else before we slide on the next topic?
I know I'm inspired now to get to the gym because of Rebecca. So right after this, I'm hitting the gym.
Let's go. I love it.
There we go. Okay, so we're gonna hit this question from Satch, unless Tanya, you want to go somewhere else with this. What do you think? You're good? Okay. So the question from Satch again is, do you feel you've had to reach a certain level of success before you could be ready to feel like leveling up others? So let's take Rebecca. What do you think? Because you're a strength conditioning coach right off the bat. What do you think?
I think so. I think part of building confidence and feeling competent enough to help others achieve what you've achieved. I think we talked about this earlier. Is like having done it yourself. It makes you more credible. It makes you more knowledgeable, obviously through your own experiences. So I do think so. I think there's always someone who's going to be more successful than we are, and so that's a good thing. We should want to strive to become smarter, to become more knowledgeable, more professional in our craft. But I also think there's still some benchmark, and what that looks like or where that point is might be different for everybody, and where they feel like they've reached that level. I think that can vary person to person. But for myself personally, I had to work for somebody else. I worked for a gym for 6.5 years. I got a lot of education that way, and it wasn't really until I became, had several years of personal training, and then I became a manager, had leadership experience, that I felt like I was prepared to go off on my own, become an entrepreneur, start my own business, build a team from scratch, and build my own brands. So that's just my personal experience, but that's kind of how I see it.
I like it. Kathy, what about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I felt I needed titles or whatever. I had to have titles under my name in order to feel worthy, I guess, of being able to level up my students. And that's probably incorrect, because you can level up somebody and make them feel good at what they're doing without having titles and without having world championships or letters behind your name or any of those things. You can still, I believe, yes, you have to have walked the walk, but you have to have done judo to be able to award a black belt to one of your judo students, for sure. But I think, I could be average Joe and I would be a better teacher than the guy with the 17 world championships, possibly, because I care most about my students and leveling them up. So yes, I felt all along, up until the last couple of years, I had to have all these titles. And that gets back to what I was talking about earlier, in order to just feel worthy of, anything really, especially to leveling up my students. If I'm going to award a black belt to a student, I need to have won all this. But to be honest, you could be the most recreational judoka on the planet or jiu-jitsu practitioner. And as long as you've walked the walk and you can teach the craft, but mainly, most importantly, that you can level up those students to be better, those students to become better. And same in the film industry. If I'm going to make a better stunt performer out of that girl, then I have to do everything possible to raise her up and let her shine. Yes, I will have had to have walked the walk and been a stunt performer myself, so I've been there. But I may have never been a Taurus Award winner, which is like Oscars for stunts, or anything. I didn't ever, and I wasn't ever in stunts. In the stunt performing industry, I was never anything, and a lot of my friends who are in the industry have ton of accolades. I just kind of was in the background doing stunts all along, on and off, here and there. And I had specialties and things that I would come in for specifically. But, I totally admired these stunt professionals who were way up there, way above. And they won all these Taurus Awards and they did all these huge gags. And that's why I never felt worthy of being a stunt coordinator. There's no way I could ever become a stunt coordinator, because I didn't do these giant things. But when I became a stunt coordinator and suddenly started supporting them, I had been through the walk, so I understood it. But mainly, I knew how to support them to do it. And that, I think, I've become a better stunt coordinator than I ever was a stunt performer. So I guess that's my answer to that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Julie, what about yourself?
Yeah, I agree with what Kathy said. You definitely have to walk the walk. And I've been in fitness for over 20 years. And when I first started as a fitness instructor, I thought, well, nobody's going to want to come to the class if I'm not fit. No one's going to want to train with me same thing if I'm not fit. And that may be the case. So you do have to be a good role model and set the stage, walk the walk. And then moving into as a cycling coach, when I first started, again, I thought, well, no one's going to want to coach with me if I'm not crushing every race and winning it all. I have all these titles. Well, that's really not the case. It's more they come to you because of your experience, that you've done the work. You might have won, but you've also failed. And I started with a new athlete this week, and she was in town, so I had her come into my office, and we did a couple hours, just some one-on-one stuff to get through all the fine tuning and some of the technical aspects that we do with training. And after she left, she said, well, I can tell that you're well researched and well versed, because she saw all of my books in my office, but not once did she mention anything. I have a couple plaques and trophies in my office. She never said, oh, well, I saw all of that, so that means you're a badass and you're a good coach. She was more, she knows that I'm well versed, I'm well read, well researched, and that I can help her level up her game. It's not about how many championships I won or lost. It's about my experience and what I can share to her, with her.
Absolutely. BBC, what about yourself?
Yeah, I would agree with that, because, for myself, it's less about the accolades than it is the experience and, the confidence that you gain in that experience. And so, early on in my previous career, I had been recruiting, and, so you're bringing individuals into the organization, you're, looking at setting them up for success. The benefit that I had in the different levels that I was able to achieve is that even at the lower levels, to be able to instill that experience and confidence, because, if you're, at the time it was recruits, now cadets, but if you're a cadet or a recruit trainer, that's part of your responsibility. So you're already sharing the information and knowledge that you would have gained, and then ensuring that that individual is set up for success. And so, for myself, as my sphere of influence increased, then absolutely, it gave me that much more opportunity and responsibility to bring individuals that were currently in the organization and support them into different leadership roles. And sometimes, when you're at those different levels, it's easier to see the strengths and abilities that individuals have, because they may not be able to see it in themselves and may not think that they have them. And, to be able to, again, set them up into positions where you're going to stretch them, not like a rubber band where it snaps back, but, give them those opportunities where they can fulfill their talents. So I think, it goes back to the initial discussion around inspiring others to succeed, but also be very methodical in how you're doing it, and, allowing others to continue to grow. So I don't know that it was any particular level. I just knew that as I was going up in the organization, that sphere of influence increases. And, especially when you're sitting in the senior levels, you absolutely have a lot more influence and opportunity to bring people into different positions, support them in their career paths, and, whatever goals that they may in fact want to pursue. But I think also, when I go back to the community that I grew up in, that was expected. So, and it didn't matter what you did, it was how you were doing it, and doing it in a good way. So it's a bit of a balance again. And yeah, I don't think there was any particular level in, it was just about always supporting people around you so that, they would be as great, if not better than myself. And so, when I left the organization and retired, there's people that had achieved all kinds of great successes, and it didn't matter what they were doing. It was the opportunities that were supported for them to achieve who they are in their capacities.
Absolutely. Julia, what about yourself?
Yes, I did feel that I needed to reach a certain level of success in a couple different ways. So in education and accolades, and then as well as in experience. And it did take me a very long time until I felt that I could put myself out there as a coach, fitness coach online, and even just the entrepreneur side of it. I had never been an entrepreneur until about a year ago. So all of this is still new, and I've grown a lot in the past year. But yeah, I was competing since 2011. I know a lot of competitors that they do one show and they're, advertising themselves as an expert, and that's not wrong. I'm just, I definitely wasn't there. I did not have those feelings. I had a lot of people assuming that I was an expert way before I felt I was. So I needed to collect all of the certificates and a lot of experience before I would actually start coaching and helping others. Though I did help others beforehand, but I think I would do it more. Well, I would do it for free for the longest time. I never valued myself to actually, make it a career until I had had a certain amount of experience. And for me, that took far longer than needed. However, I don't regret it because I had the career of a lifetime. I got to experience so much while I built my education and my experience. So it worked well for me. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Kate, what about yourself?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it earlier with myself, I guess. So, I'm trying to level up others with the podcast by interviewing them and sort of sharing their stories. So for that, I mean, I guess I don't feel like I necessarily needed to reach a level of success because I'm just interviewing them. But I do think, I don't know, I think there's a difference too between like if you're going to level them up in sort of being a coach and like maybe charging money for a service, like you should probably have to reach a certain level of success or just be able to know what you're doing. Like, for example, I might not, if I was going to do a fitness competition, I might not want to hire someone who had never done one or who is like overweight and eats McDonald's every day. But I think that you can level up others without, because you're not like charging money for a service, you could help inspire them very easily. And I don't think that you necessarily have to reach a level of success to do that. Like, I think it's almost more inspiring to see someone who hasn't reached a level of success, but who's out there like grinding every day and doing workouts or doing like the hard things. And they're just maybe more of a normal person versus someone who's like a semi-professional athlete.
Mm-hmm. Tanya, you got any thoughts?
Yeah. So in regards to what Kate just said, which was really resonates because I don't feel I'm at a place to coach anyone per se, but I realize that just because I'm not a coach doesn't mean I can't be a good training or sparring partner, if that makes sense, because there's a million different ways to level somebody up. And I inadvertently I'm becoming some sort of mental health advocate just by telling my story and just talking about being essentially in the trenches of like, this is what I'm doing. This is what's worked for me. This is what hasn't. Even if you just take away the fact that, oh, this is not anything what I want to do, what this woman's doing on the internet, then I've done something. I've contributed something to someone's development. And then in regards to things like sometimes not feeling like you have exactly the requisite education or the experience, I found that for me, a lot of valuable coaches may not have had exactly the right letters after the last name, but they care. You have to be competent to a certain degree, of course, and more importantly, you have to be curious about the individual that you're coaching, you're guiding, and you have to work hard. You may not know at the time, but you're like, I'm going to research. I'm going to figure out what will work for you. And I imagine Kathy knows, like, leveling up others also causes you to level up, because I've heard when instructors, black belts, start teaching, that's when they really like deepen their understanding of jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
So
true.
There is that.
And I'm too much imposter syndrome to ever even want to teach jiu-jitsu yet. I only teach judo or judo for jiu-jitsu. I know I have a black belt in jiu-jitsu and I've won 7 championships, but I still have major imposter syndrome. I don't even
magic
teach
number.
kids.
That's when it all like hits. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
And then there's things like I've read, I think it's Stephen Pressfield's Going Pro. There was a certain point where I was very reluctant to refer to myself as a professional photographer or illustrator. And eventually I began to believe that I was capable of doing so, because I had not just simply reached a certain level, like I could make one nice looking image, but I could make a number of nice looking images in a lot of different conditions. And for me, like a pro or a success, that is kind of how I measure it. What separates a pro from an amateur is that I can do something consistently well in pretty much any scenario. I have a number of different tools and skill sets and experiences that I can then employ to my advantage. An example of that is when I actually started believing that I might actually be able to do this for money is Sean and Seb. We were doing a photo shoot in the woods somewhere by Red, and the weather conditions weren't great, and I had very little equipment, but I just relied on my experience, relied on all the practice and on my understanding of the topic, and I still managed to make a decent looking image. And that's when I'm like, okay, I think I might actually be able to guide or level up others because I have shown to myself that I can do these things with whatever you hand me, whatever situation you hand me.
Yeah. Sean, you got any thoughts?
I do. And so certain level of success, I'm still trying in my own head for many years to define success. I don't even know what it means. I don't think I've ever been particularly successful. I think that I have a relentless pursuit to be better, but I don't know if I'll ever be better. So I don't know if I've ever achieved success. But I do know this in respect to professional and amateur descriptors. So any athlete that I ever worked with over the 15 years, when they would generally hassle me to coach them because I turned away more than I ever accepted. If they were a cool person and were in it for the right reasons, I didn't care if they'd ever been on a bike before. That was unimportant to me. Or if they'd been on a bike 1,000 years, it didn't matter to me. You had to show up as the right person. And if I saw something in the person, then I'd accept them as an athlete. And within the day, I'd be saying to them, listen, now you're a professional. And what does that mean? It means that I would challenge them to drop the word amateur out of their mindset and immediately in a split second start acting like a professional. It doesn't mean that you are a world champion. It just means that now you're in the game of professional thought, professional action, professional pursuit. And that mindset shift in a split second, anyone can do it. It's not contingent on results or how long you've been in the game or whether you've got a sponsor. It's contingent on your mind, your mindset shifting from an amateur mindset to a professional mindset. And it's the professionalism of your mindset that will take you much further than lazy mindset. That's a casual statement. A professional mindset will take you much further in life than the poorly chosen amateur mindset. We've all got the choice to choose between the two, and no one should ever accept an amateur mindset versus a professional mindset.
Absolutely. Now, any other thoughts or questions that anybody would like to jump in on?
I had a question.
Absolutely.
Since I had such an amazing experience panel of women, badass ones, like, have you guys ever experienced some men who put you down, not lift you up? Because maybe they're a bit threatened, maybe with your success and that sort of thing. And what do you do about it?
That's a great question. Who am I going to pick on first? How about Julia? I'm going to put you on first. Put you on the fire.
Oh, geez, that's a big one. So if men are intimidated or threatened by my success, is that what?
Yeah, or put you down instead of lifting you up. How do you react on that?
Yeah, definitely. I guess that's happened lots. I've mostly worked with men as well, so I've been, I guess, surrounded, at least for the UN work. So for the past decade, I've mostly worked on deployments, so mostly with men. So I think just being really comfortable and really confident in who I am, and that how I woke up every day, you know, but it was just certain scenarios where I found, I think especially because I worked with mostly men or had all male passengers on my plane. So for instance, in Afghanistan, we would, being a civilian woman there, I get a certain level of attention or that you didn't really want, to be honest. Kind of made me kind of hide a little bit. I didn't want to stand out. So, and I wanted people's respect. Right. And I think a lot of these ladies can probably understand that in certain positions, especially if you work in a male dominated field, you want to prove that you belong to, and that you can hold your own, and that they should respect you and not just think you're decoration or flirt or whatever. So I found I think that might have helped my fitness career too. I think that I'm a very competitive person, but I probably pushed myself even more because I had something to prove, that I was also strong and also brave, and I deserved to be there too. So yeah, I got very competitive in our gyms in Afghanistan. They would film us in lots of different competitions, and it helped my credentials, I guess, if I was filmed lifting super heavy, and they would put that up in the gym, because then when my soldiers came on, they would respect me more. You know, if I asked to check their weapons or anything like that. So I did feel like I had to prove myself a little to get respect from many of the men in the field that I worked in. I don't know what else to say about that.
No, that's good. Kate, what about yourself?
I've been, I mean, throughout my career, like I've worked with a lot of really awesome men, and I've never really run into a situation where someone has said that I can't do anything. I mean, there was one person who was kind of in a position of leadership back like years ago at an event, and he was drinking too much, and he sort of started saying some stuff to me. But right before that, he had said some stuff to like a smaller guy. So in that case, I think that he was just a bully, and it wasn't necessarily, I don't know, like that to me was just such an insignificant little thing. And he had never actually like worked with me personally, because he was in such a higher position. So he had sort of no idea. But everyone that I've worked with, I mean, it's sort of, you're judged based on merit, or I always have been, which is good. I mean, the only times I've felt like maybe there was one course that like I didn't perform very well on. I wasn't in the shape that I needed to be in, and that wasn't, it wasn't because I was a female. It was because on that course, like I was not as fit as I should have been, and that was just the case. And then the next one, I made sure that I was, and it was fine. But it's very much like it's based on whether or not you can do the job. And yeah, I really haven't run into any incidents with like men who say I can't do anything. Like everyone I work with right now is really awesome and supportive. So I guess I'm pretty lucky for that, although that's the way it should be.
Mm-hmm. BBC, how about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So earlier on in my career, I found that to be far more challenging than later, because, as you progress in life and as well as professionally, I think your confidence, well, at least for myself, my confidence grew. So I was less likely to be intimidated by that. And, and I absolutely was early on. I worked with an individual that was, pretty misogynistic, and I didn't really understand the pathways that were available to me at the time. I felt that, based upon the interactions that were occurring, that, I had to work harder. I absolutely, had that ability to demonstrate that I was more than capable and competent in being in the organization, as well as the attributes that I had and the experience that I had when I had that interaction. And, over time, I came to learn that that's a reflection on that individual. And they absolutely were intimidated by the sense of, those moments where there was a belief of where I may go in my career and where they may not. And so it wasn't easy in that moment. But again, through the course of my career, as I became more confident and a lot more secure in the individual that I am today, that when they did happen, and they absolutely did, I just sort of thought, okay, well, that's your stuff, not mine. And I think your armor grows as well, right? So, and what I mean by that is that your resiliency grows, and your understanding and recognition of another individual's thoughts and their lack of confidence. And that's literally what I chalked it up to. I know I'm summarizing this without going into too much detail, respecting the time that's available. It wasn't easy, but I also think that as an individual, I grew from those experiences as well. So it made it much easier as life went on.
Absolutely. Rebecca, how about yourself?
I've been really fortunate as well. I can't recall a situation in my professional career having ever been threatened or put down by men. I've been fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of really supportive men, and I work in a male-dominated industry, and I haven't had any. The only negative interactions that I've had are times when men have put me down have been like trolls on social media, but I don't really give that any weight because that's just par for the course when it comes to the social media world, and that has no bearing on my life. So other than that, no, I've been really fortunate in that regard.
Awesome. Julie, how about yourself?
I wouldn't say that I've been put down by men per se, but it would be more of them believing in your skill set. So when I first started racing, it was classic when you would be racing, often men would not pull over, wouldn't let you go past. So they wouldn't believe that you could be faster than them. So it was, a bit of an ego issue. And one example that stands out is a number of years ago, my husband and I were doing a stage race together, the Trans Rockies. So as a team, there's certain requirements. You have to be so close to your partner within the stage. And it happened time and time again. My husband would be ahead, and then I would try to catch up to him, and these guys wouldn't let me get past, to the point that my husband had to start yelling, like, "You've got to move over. My wife's about to kick your ass on this climb, so step away." So they just wouldn't have the belief system that I could beat them, and it was a bit of an ego issue. I think things have definitely improved, and men are starting to realize that women can be as fast, if not faster or stronger. But I would say that would be one of the biggest challenges that I ran into initially when I started racing.
Mm-hmm. Tanya, how about yourself?
Like Kate, I think I've been very fortunate not to encounter a whole lot of, I guess, impediments or discrimination, at least in the gym or the spaces that I've grown up in. And like Brenda, I view this as people having, it's really indicative of their relationship with having their mentality challenged or having their narratives challenged. Like, this is their stuff, this isn't mine, because what gender I am, it shouldn't matter. It should be just really very much a meritocracy. And I'm pretty sure Kathy knows I'd say white and blue belt guys, especially the earlier white belts, when they have this moment, this look in their eyes where a woman is getting the better of them on the mats, and they just have this death match where like they cannot lose. It is suddenly kumite, just no holds barred. I must win. And when they don't, at first I'd have a bit of schadenfreude, but now it's kind of a chance to be like, now this is the first step of leveling up, because this narrative, you needed to lose this. You needed to learn this lesson. And yeah, welcome to the first day of the rest of your life kind of thing. And yeah, that's all I got to say on that.
I like that. Sean, you got any thoughts on maybe even having to tune some men up and be like, hey man, shut your mouth kind of deal?
I have done that physically, emotionally, psychologically. I have done those things. And quite frankly, I had to learn the lesson myself in order to better understand the lesson so that I could then reinforce the lesson. And so BJJ is a great way to understand what you can and can't do on day one. And irrespective of the size of a person or the gender of a person or what have you, I think BJJ is an amazingly valuable first night lesson. But throughout my careers, I have seen a fair bit of inappropriate language or inappropriate thought processes on this subject. So maybe I've seen it more than the girls. I don't know. But for sure, I've seen it. And whenever I've seen it, I come down pretty hard on it.
Absolutely. Now we got about 10 minutes ish left. I got a couple of questions. Tanya, is there anything else that you got that you wanted to hit before we do some final thoughts?
I got a whole list of questions, so I'd love to hear the questions first from the audience, so to speak.
Raj. Okay, well, let's hit those real quick then. Winter Storm's got a really good one. It's kind of deep, so I'm going to do a quick one first, and then I'm going to come back to you, Winter Storm. Don't worry. Dr. C in the house, he says, do you feel sibling order matter? Sibling order matters, such as being the youngest or having an older brother, as example. Do you think that that's helped in, or maybe adjusted the way in which you he put this in when we were talking about the needing of success or reaching a certain level of success in order to pass stuff on. But do you think that, the drive in which you found yourself achieving mattered based on where you are sibling wise? I'm going to start with, who haven't I started with yet? Julie, how about yourself?
For me, I would say no. I have one sibling. However, she's only a year older than I am, so there's not a big discrepancy. I wouldn't say it was an impact for me in terms of moving forward or how I operated.
Perfect. Let's go to Kathy then.
Yeah, I definitely think it did affect me. I had my two older brothers beating me up a lot at home. And, I had to prove myself constantly. I had to be scrappy. I had to, they looked up to Dad, and Dad, gave approval and all of that because they were boys and they could do boys things. And of course, then I wanted to do boys things too. Henceforth, why I ended up joining judo. But for sure, being the youngest and being the little sister, getting my head put through a wall and things like that as a kid, made me want to prove myself and be more scrappy throughout life. And that's probably why I got that drive.
Rebecca, how about yourself?
I have an older brother, but we are really close. We always have been growing up. Like, we never fought or had any physical altercations or anything like that. The only thing I think that maybe it did for me was just made me really comfortable having a lot of guy friends and being around the guys. So growing up and then working in a male dominated industry, spending a lot of time in the weight room, which is mostly guys, I think maybe that had a factor in my comfort level there. But besides that, not really.
Perfect. BBC, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I was raised as the oldest of my family, and not only my immediate family, but all of my cousins and my mom's side of the family. So that sense of responsibility was pretty much, infused in my DNA from the time that I was born, pretty much, and and the role that I took on. So, within a First Nation community, and certainly within a family that's predominantly First Nations, you have those roles and responsibilities, and that's ultimately what I had to fulfill. So everything from, if my cousin needed support and, called for whatever it might be, then it was my role and responsibility to ensure that that support was provided. And it didn't matter if it was, co-signing a loan by way of example, or helping them health-wise, or, supporting them through school. That was always a part of my expectations as I was being raised. And for my siblings, again, the same thing. Like, I'm the one that had to make sure that the meals were cooked, that were on the table, like all of those aspects for them, that, as they were going through education and so forth, that I would be available to help them. And so I think that definitely helped. I also think that growing up with a lot of male cousins helped, because very competitive, always participating in some form of athleticism. So it didn't matter if it was hockey, whether it was baseball, or, curling, although, some may not call that a sport, but, soccer and so forth.
It's a good
just
time
always
anyway.
competitive, right? Well, there's a bit of strategy with it. Come on.
A little bit, for sure. Kate, how about yourself?
Yeah, so my boss actually asked me a few months ago, like, if I had older brothers, and he was very surprised when I told him that I was an only child growing up. But all of the activities that I was involved in, so at the time, I played hockey growing up, and I played baseball, among other things. But at the time, like, there were no girls hockey leagues or girls baseball leagues, so I was often like the only or one of the only females on the team. So I think going through that growing up, it was just kind of the norm. So then now, if I find myself in like a military environment where I'm the only female, like on a course or at my unit, or doing whatever it is, if I walk into a new gym and I'm the only one there in the jujitsu class, like, to me, I'm comfortable with that, just because that was kind of the way that I grew up. So yeah, I obviously can't comment on sibling order because I have zero experience with that.
No siblings. Perfect. Julia, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I have one of those super unique families that I'm the only one from both my parents. I have an older brother and sister from my dad's first marriage, and then I have a younger sister from my mom's second marriage. So and then there's more that are related to them. So I'm the only one in the middle. I guess I'm the middle child, but I feel like I'm the big sister. So I was raised by a single mom. So it was just my mom and my sister and I growing up. So my mom raised me and my little sister. And so I just feel like I am the big sister. My older siblings are more like cousins in a way. They weren't really around, and they're much, much older. So I don't know. And I never lived with men growing up, so I don't know. I have no influence from men whatsoever. So I have no idea how I ended up working with all men. Like, no idea. Like, that's for therapy right there. I'm not sure how that happened. But I did always feel like the protector of my little sister. And then my mom wasn't very, she wasn't well for a long time. So off on disability. So I was, being the older sister, I was kind of the protector, and like I felt that need to take care of both my mom and my sister. So I had to take on a leadership role very young.
Absolutely. Tanya, how about yourself?
I hate to admit it, but I was the older sibling that definitely, accidentally, for the record, put my brother's head into a wall.
Accidentally.
He was trying to shake me off, or I was trying to shake him off, rather. But yeah, I was the oldest sibling, but I think what that gave me was kind of a sense of trailblazing, because usually the older sibling has to go and break all the rules in order for the younger ones to have a more lenient style of parenting. But other than that, what I usually did or found myself ending up, the situations in which I found myself ending up were I was usually like the smallest, the weakest, the youngest in my group. So it's sort of a play on that. If you're the smartest person in the room, you got to find a different room. And I always ended up in situations where I was required to level up. And it does seem to be a through line, I guess. Don't mean to assess all the amazing women on here, but it seems to be that you've found rooms where you are challenged, right? It just resting in complacency isn't your guys' jam. And also, I guess to answer, or my thoughts on Dr. C's thing is that while sibling order may not matter, and for me, and also that you took what you experienced, like Brenda had the caretaking and the different situations that you ladies found yourself in, and you just leveraged it. You made the most of it, and you use that to forge your path, is kind of what I'm gathering here.
Mm-hmm. That's outstanding. Now we are just about at time, so I'm going to go down the panel one more time and get some final thoughts, and then we'll shut her down. But before we do that, I just want to absolutely thank you guys so much, because this has been a fantastic conversation. 2 hours apparently is not enough, because I know we can probably sit here and talk all day, which maybe one day in the future we will. I'm definitely going to set up another panel like this, and I'd love for all of y'all to come back. It'll be another wicked conversation. Winterstorm, we will get to your question in a minute. I'm actually going to throw it up so you guys can think about it. And if anybody that's watching has any thoughts or anything like that, by all means, put them in the comments, because we do read them. We make sure that we'll be able to hit this. But this is just a really interesting concept that I think we should think about. He says, I see excellence on this panel. Do you feel that excellence is measured differently between men and women? And if it is, who is doing it and why? I think it's a great question. I'm going to save it for next time. So Winterstorm, for the next panel, I will put it up. Absolutely. We just don't have enough time for that right now. So going down the panel, let's start with Tanya, actually, and then I'll work my way up. What do you think?
It has been an amazing conversation, and I have learned so much, and just happy to contribute and be here.
Outstanding. Julie, how about yourself? Final thoughts?
Agree. It was a pleasure meeting the ladies and knowing more about their stories and being inspired. I would just say on the topic of success, yeah, I mean, you just anyone can achieve or thrive towards their own personal success. It just takes patience, discipline, and focus, and surrounding yourself by the right people who inspire you and who are positive.
Absolutely. BBC, how about yourself?
It's been absolutely fabulous participating today. It's hard not to jump in because wanting to listen to everyone else's stories. It's been just remarkable. We did touch on this a little bit, the introspection piece, right? Really knowing who you are as an individual and what you bring to the table is important. And, that comes through experience, obviously, but it also comes through those lessons of, when we're failing forward or we're just learning, and the commitment to lifelong learning and being curious and inquisitive. So again, it's been absolutely wonderful to participate. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Absolutely. You're welcome anytime. Kathy, how about yourself?
Yeah, it was just said to surround yourself with excellence. And definitely you guys need to be my circle. So we all be my friends.
Absolutely.
On one condition, I need to hear Jackie Chan stories.
There you
go. 100%. I got
Jackie
lots
Chan
of them.
stories.
I'll let you beat me up, Kathy.
There
Sweet.
you go.
Bonus.
Julia, how about yourself? Final thoughts?
Yeah, this has been fantastic. I'm so honored to be here and to meet all of you. And I want to be friends with everybody. This is an amazing group. And I would love to learn how to become a stunt woman. If you want to teach me how to do that, that would be amazing. That could be a next goal. And I think that's, when it comes to success, it's just always never giving up, always striving for more, and never feeling that pressure. If you haven't achieved a certain level, maybe there was a reason for that pivot, and what's another goal that could come of that, or there's always more. We've got our whole lives to live, so I'm excited for more success in the future.
Absolutely. Rebecca, how about yourself?
Yeah, this was great. I really enjoyed learning about everybody's backgrounds and upbringings and perspectives on life based on our own personal experiences. And I'm excited to know all of you now and have you in my circle and follow your journeys as you continue forging your paths. So thank you all for your time, and thank you guys for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Anytime. Kate, how about yourself?
This was just such an insane lineup of women. And like I said before, I kind of have imposter syndrome being here. And I guess my final closing thought is that, sometimes we can think that there's a lot of extra pressure on us as women to, maybe if we're in the same sphere as men doing something, that we need to perform extra or achieve more than the men just to be considered on the same level. But I think a lot of that is, in my experience, a lot of it is kind of in my own head. And I definitely know, talking to guys from work, it's that doesn't even enter their heads. So it's, sometimes things get spun up in my own head about they're thinking that I can't do this because I'm a woman, or this happened, or whatever it is, right? It's they're not thinking that. I'm thinking that they're thinking that. So I think sometimes we just need to go a little easier on ourselves.
I like it. Sean, how about yourself? Final thoughts?
Yeah, just going to twist it up a little bit right at the tail end so no one has an opportunity to respond, but I think it'll make people think about things maybe a little bit right at the tail end. The cost of success. Irrespective of the costs that we all have to pay to pursue success, it's a worthy price to pay, if not for ourselves, then most certainly for the people who are observing our own individual journeys. So if you don't want to pay the price for your success, pay the price for the eyeballs that are on you as you succeed in order to inspire others.
Yeah, absolutely. Way to just dig that knife in right at the last second.
That's what I like to do.
Again, I cannot thank you all enough. This has been an outstanding 2 hours, and yeah, I think I'm gonna have to extend the timeline on this one for the next go around, because we should be here all day to discuss this. This is a huge topic, huge panel. Can't thank you all enough. It has been outstanding. So as we learn, what the cost of success is, as we build upon the successes we've had in the past, we get to learn how to be better just in general every day. And you can do that with us here on The Collective. We'll see you all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chivo.